YouTube. We're back again today for more of our Origins Bonanza coverage. We're here live at the White Wizard Games booth with Rob.
Hey, how you doing?
And he is the creator of an upcoming game called Sorceror.
Actually, this one is created by our European team led by Peter Schultz, I've done some development on it, but Peter Schultz is the lead designer, and I am super excited about this game. This has been many years in development. Ton of playtesters in Europe have been kicking the tires on this game for quite a while, and we've got a phenomenal group of artists working on the game. The graphic design and art is fantastic, and it's got some really fun and unique gameplay. Sorcerer is going to be our first large box game. So basically, if you're familiar with Star Realms and Hero Realms and Epic Card Game, those are they have big gameplay, but they come in little tiny boxes, or 15 or 20 bucks. Very inexpensive games that provide a lot of bang for your buck. With Sorcerer, there is just a lot of cool components in the game, and a lot of cards, and basically it's just too much game to fit in a little box. So this is actually going to be our first sort of larger boxed game. In Sorcerer, it's set in Victorian England, and the players are playing evil sorcerers descended from dark gods who are using their evil magic to battle for control of the world. Everybody in Sorcerer is a bad guy, but you want to be the bad guy who wins. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to create a character. It's very easy to do. You just there are 3 rows of cards that we have laid out here. Each one is a mini deck, and they each have a symbol, and all the cards in this deck have that same symbol on them. So if you ever get your cards mixed up, you can easily sort them back out again into these 12 decks. And the first row here, these are your character, and it has your character and his name. These are the awakened cards. So basically, the awakening is when the sorcerer first gets their powers, and then you have these lineage decks. The lineage is basically which dark god you're descended from, and it determines what magical powers that you have. And then finally, you have your domain deck. This is basically where your home turf is, where you've been training, and it will determine some of the minions that you have working for you, etc. So what you do is you pick one deck from stack for this first row, one deck from the second row, and one deck from the third row, and you put the 3 of those together, and you'll pull off these cover cards from each one of them. So, for example, you might be Tegu, grabbing this deck, and you might be a Necromancer. So you're grabbing the Necromancer pile there, and your domain might be the Forgotten Temple. So then you become Tegu, the Necromancer of the Forgotten Temple, and these 3 cards will stay in front of you, and these give you special abilities you can use during the course of the game. So each time you create your character, you'll have a different set of special powers that you have. And additionally, you'll shuffle these 3 stacks of cards together, and that will be your deck. So you'll have this unique combination of cards for your deck. We captured some of the great elements of trading card game deck design in this game without any of the work or money that goes into it. So there are a lot of, when you're dealing with card games, there's a lot of neat synergies you can get, and combinations of cards that do interesting interactions with each other. For people who've played constructed trading card games, they'll know what I'm talking about, where you can design decks that do certain things, and they have little tricks that they perform during the game, and they're a lot of fun to play. we've sort of built these kinds of synergies into these various decks. So every time you create a deck at the game, it will have different synergies that do different things, and that can be a ton of fun. So that's the game, your deck creation. You just grab one of each 3 piles, you shuffle them together, you put your special cards on the table in front of you, and you've got your deck. And then you shuffle up and you take a 6-card hand. And then each player has their individual player board. And these are just mock-ups, so the final ones will be higher, high quality boards, etc. And on your player board, you have an energy tracker over here. When you play cards, when you play spells, it uses energy, and it will reduce the energy. So if you played a card that cost, let's say, for example, if you played this card that cost 3, then you would simply reduce your energy by 3 points. In order to play a card, you have to use an action. You have an action counter here, and play order is passed back and forth. So you start with 6 actions, and when the player who has initiative goes first, when they do something, like say play this card, it would reduce your actions available by 1, and then play would pass to your opponent, who would then be able to spend an action. When you spend an action, you have a variety of things you can do. You can play a card from your hand by paying its cost. You can gain energy, so you can meditate and gain. You can gain energy. You can draw cards, meditate to draw 2 cards. You can channel to gain 2 energy. You can play a card from your hand. You can also reinforce, basically move guys around the board. So unlike a trading card game where there's sort of one general zone where you're playing, and this plays a little bit more like a board game. There are 3 battlefields. So we've got the City of London, we've got Whitechapel, and we've got Southwark. And when you play a minion, you have to choose which location that minion is going into. That minion can only affect that area unless it specifically says on the card that it affects other areas. So let's say you played a minion that said destroy all other minions. It would destroy all the other minions that were in that one location. It wouldn't affect the other locations. You can when you're spending an action, you can also spend an action to take a minion who's in one location and move them over 1 space. Some minions can fly, and they'll have this wings icon on them, and a flying minion can go anywhere with a move. So basically, if this guy were here, I could spend an action to move him here or all the way over there. You can have up to 4 minions in any one location, and your opponent can do the same. Now, if when we get to
artwork.
Yeah, the artwork on this game is gorgeous, and the graphic design is great. The iconography, the card frames, even the card backs are gorgeous. I'm really excited about the visuals in this game. Okay, so you've got your actions. You've used them to gain energy, to draw cards, to play cards on the table. After both players have used all their actions, so both players have used 6 actions, then starting with the player who has initiative, you resolve the battlefields one at a time. So let's say we had this board set up at the end of the turn. Here, you have no guys and I have 1 guy. So you'd go first, but there's nothing to be done there, and then it would be my turn to go, and I would get to roll 5 dice. Actually, let's move this guy over. We'll pretend you had this guy here. So you'd go first. You have 3 dice available. So again, these are mock-ups. The final dice will be carved, of course, but you have hits. You have blanks or misses. You have that represents 2 hits, and then the star is a critical hit. So this minion has an offensive 3. So when you attack with this minion, you get to roll 3 dice. So in this case, we've got a miss, and 2 hits. The damage is assigned by the receiving player. So in this case, I would take 2 points of damage. I could take it on my minion. I could take it on the battlefield, marking the damage up to 2, or I could split it up and take 1 on my minion and 1 on the battlefield. After your minions, if you use 1 minion, then I get to use 1 of my minions, and we'd go back and forth using minions until all the minions in this area has gone. In this case, I'd be rolling 5 dice, so I'd have 4 hits to assign. This guy only has 1 defense, so you could put a damage there, or you could just take the damage on the battlefield. If you have multiple minions in a battlefield, you go with 1 of your minions, and then your opponent gets to go with 1 of theirs, and then you get to move with your next minion. If a minion dies before it gets a chance to attack, it just doesn't get to attack. The stars, the critical hits, these are assigned by the attacker. So if I was attacking you and I got, since your guy only has 1 defense, if I got 1 critical hit, I could say, oh, I really want to kill that guy off, I'll put a damage on him, then you go to the discard pile. If your opponent has no minions in an area, but you do at the beginning of the combat, you're unopposed in that area, and critical hits do double damage. So if you can get a territory to 12 points of damage on your opponent's side, then you win that area, you win that battlefield, you flip it over, and you put a control marker on your side of that battlefield. If you can control 2 of the 3 battlefields, you win the game. That's the general mechanics for Sorcerer. There are lots of cool card interactions. There's various card types. You can equip minions with cards which will have they have the stats and the name along the side. This Deep Madness card weakens an opposing minion. So for example, you could have played this on my guy, and I would have -2 attack and -1 health, and then of course any special rules applying to that. And you also have equipment that can make your guys more powerful that you can play on your guys. You also have sorcery cards which will do an effect. You read what they say on them, and then they go to your discard pile after you spent the action on them. So there's a bunch of different card types and a lot of cool strategic options in the game.
All right, and when is this coming out?
So we're going to have a Kickstarter for this game this fall, and expect to see it in stores in early 2018.
All right, fantastic. That is Sorcerer from White Wizard Games. Thank you very much, Rob.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying this Origins coverage, please be sure to click on the subscribe button down below. And as always, thanks for your time, YouTube.